So first, let's hear a presentation from the Hong Kong University of Science Technology, HKUST, on designing compact library spaces. So I'd like to welcome our speaker, Mr. Edward Spodick, our Associate Director of Library Services of the Lee Shao Key Library at HKUST. Mr. Spodick, please.
I need this so people online can hear me. Just the first thing I want to point out is this is a picture of our university. Okay. This is not photoshopped. Okay. But that impacts design. We won't talk too much about how it impacts design, but just so it's in the back of your mind that this is always one of the aspects of your environment, your space. And, but however, they did cut me a couple minutes shorter, so I'll move on. That's me, no problem. You can look it up later. Quick overview of our campus. We're a fairly recent university founded in 1991, and with expansion and space handling in mind from the beginning, because you start with a smaller student body and then expand the student body. And it has a lot of interesting developments relating to that. So we started with 3 floors. Then the coming 2 floors were used for other purposes and then became part of the library as the need grew. And the bottom floor was our primary collection. And from the beginning, we installed mobile, electrically operated compact shelving, publicly accessible. And at that time, it was the largest such installation in Asia. It may still be, for all I know. I haven't actually looked. They also installed a frame to expand the building. You can see here, and then you can see the extension later. So this was, again, part of the plan for future growth of space along with the student body, okay? And there were a variety of other things we'll talk about as we go through. This is a current snapshot of our campus, of our library and its space. 750,000 book capacity, a little over 12,500 square meters. I just want to highlight 2 things, that we have roughly 76 user rooms. At least 3/4 of those are user bookable, unmediated, just through online. And we have over 3,000, come on. Okay, well, in the lower left, over 3,000 seats in the building. That doesn't mean you can have 3,000 users. You have a study room, there may only be 3 people in it, but you got 7 chairs, or who drags what around. But if we actually had 3,000 people, probably the air handling units wouldn't be able to cope with it anyway. Space provision, there's a complex formula. Our funding body is government-based, University Grants Commission, very traditional old British style, and there was a lot of stuff relating to physical book volume equivalents and there was no online at that time, and a lot of argument about how much shelving space, how much study space, how much office space. Everything was very formulaic and calculated. In 2000, there was a government space allocation study that said, your university has too much, your library, you have too much space within the formula. But part of that is we hadn't reached our full expansion of students yet. So the space was to be filled, and they were saying, well, maybe we should take some away from you, or you certainly don't need funding for X or Y or Z. So we raised some flaws with the study. And as I'll mention later, we also started exploring what counts and what doesn't count in the formula. Do we have space that doesn't count against us, that we can do interesting things with? And those will be mentioned later as well. There's different pressures, institutional pressures, okay, increasing student and faculty population. The 10-year plan would to be for 10,000 students. In 2000, we had 9,500. In 2011, we had 11,350. That's a bit of a jump. I'll mention it later. Currently, we have over 17,000 FTS. But only 12,600 of those are in the government subvention allocation. So the government funding, so the formula is for 12,600. The extra 5,000 are not government funded, self-finance programs, and those are like beyond the scope of the formula. And so that impacts a lot of things in a lot of interesting ways. There's also expanding programs. Big change was all the universities in Hong Kong changed from a 3-year undergraduate program to a 4-year undergraduate program in 2010. So it was about a four-year plan, but that meant that in 1 year you had 2 incoming freshman classes, okay, both of equal sizes. So you suddenly had mass more students, mass more faculty. And so a lot of money had to be put in by the government to space, offices, classrooms, library expansion, et cetera, et cetera. So there were what about additional resources, we said? We have e-subscriptions now. Your population goes up, the charge goes up. So all of that had to be, put into the budget. Changing pedagogy, increased group work, more heavily electronic resources. Basically, as you can see, constant change, lots of space conversion, lots of adjustment, lots of modification. Here is one floor of our library around exam time. It gets a little crowded. This was very traditional space, and this is what it looks like with fewer people in it. So you can see it's basically your traditional tables, your traditional carrels. You don't see electrical outlets, okay? You don't see too much flexibility. So we modified that space, but we needed to modify that space without losing much in the way of seats. So, involving designers, involving architects. So this is the same space a number of years later, where you have much more task-based chairs, flexibility, hexagons and trapezoids in terms of table shape, carpet coloration with the lines, higher furniture over near the windows so you can take advantage of the view instead of only looking up at the sky, things like that. Also, growing group work. So this shows you the increase in group space and study space over time in our library. So we started with just 4, then 10, then 12. In 2006, the internet was well established, and we started to remove shelving from the reference collection. So actually, 1/3 of our reference collection went away. We created an information commons, but it was very one person, one computer type of thing. And then 3 years later, removed some more reference shelves, expanded the information commons, made it a little more flexible space, a little more collaborative space. In 2012, we had to do a space swap, 1,800, and it's square meters, not cubic meters, and a typo on mine that M3 is an M2, sorry. But we got 1,800 square meters of shelving had to go away. And we got government funding to renovate this space. Now, where the books went, we got a on-campus, off-campus storage, out of library storage, capacity for 70,000 volumes. And then just about a year ago, we lost that space because they needed more classrooms. And we said, well, what do we do with the, like we've got 50,000 books. And they said, you can throw them away, it's okay. So I won't even get into what we did. Everyone knows those kinds of stories. Expansion, 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 finding ways within the existing space to meet more needs, more changes. This is just a couple of weeks ago. You notice we had on our website almost 2,000 people studying in the building. These are not during the day. This is a snapshot of that moment, okay? So this is a live tracking of this week, and compared to the previous week, it's around the same kind of numbers. So we have 3,000 seats, but we got 2,000 people in the building. So we get pretty chock-a-block. And then the occupancy is study rooms and other types of things. Other space pressures, society, environmental, small homes, not much space available to study at home. Most dormitories in the early years had no study space built in. Okay, the common rooms were just TV, some kitchen, some chatting, very hard to study. Okay, also the climate here, much of the year you can't study very well outdoors. unless you really enjoy dripping sweat onto your book or laptop or whatever, or the sun glare on the screen. No, I can't study here. Try and find a tree sometimes. Um, and then we also had an issue in 2016, a massive expansion of the nearby population. So this, on the upper part, on the edge by the shore, that's our campus. This is the little village next door. These buildings around it, it's like suddenly, okay, we're going to triple the population of that village next door. Now, until that time, we had been the only university library that was able to be open to the public and not have a gate because we're not downtown. So, we still had some issues of, hey, it's an air-conditioned place. If we suddenly have that many extra people, so, okay, it was time to install an actual gate system. So, now we have that. And we have that to maintain and that to occupy space. Governmental political, I mentioned some of this before, the allocation, also pressure from the public saying government-funded space should be open to the public. And it was only 5 years later we took away that public access. We were in a good position. We could say we are open to the public. It's okay. But, what about ongoing? In 2010, the education changed. 25 to 30% more students. The library got 17% more space and was specifically told not one extra shelf was allowed. That actually makes it easier to, you maximize the learning space, so it makes it easier that all that space goes to the new population. But again, what's not counted against the allowance? Outdoor space. Yeah, sure, half the year you don't really want to be out there, but you can be out there at other times. So we have a rooftop garden and 7 terraces built in so that this space doesn't count in the formula, but it's nice study space. This got it on a nice, beautiful day. This is not one of the times, I'm not taking a picture during a typhoon. I'm not taking a picture, during the sweaty time. Make it look cool, make it look hip, make it look fun. And then this is one of the smaller terraces on the lower floor, so it's protected from the rain. And we've got 7 of these. So again, none of this counted against the allocation. So you always think, whatever the project is, think about what is optimization. Don't just maximize seats. You need to maintain and enhance the quality of your environment, maximize the existence of new and existing facilities. You notice on the end of these ranges, we were decommissioning a classroom and doing renovation. And so we had about, 40 or so of these tablet chairs. I didn't want to throw them away. They were in good shape. So we said, okay, let's just try putting them here and see what happens. And even when we're not chock-a-block full, some people really like it because it faces those windows and it faces the water. It faces that view. Whether they just want to study. Some of them will drag one of those tablet chairs and bring it into between the 2 rows where we have a pillar, and they have their own little nest, And these are people that don't want the distraction of the view. You have to accommodate that as well. Reallocate, reprovision existing space more and more, all through many, many projects we've all talked about. Shelving to study space conversion, whether you're putting something in compact shelving, eliminating things that are now online ready reference, or just simply, whether you want to call it weeding, or the Baptist University had a much nicer term for it. We actually, one of our fellow libraries here was getting rid of some compact shelving, and they offered it, and we said, we had to pay for the demolition, for the dismantling, relocation, and reassembly. Still a lot cheaper than buying new, and it was not that old. So that allowed us, again, to accommodate print collection growth without devoting any more physical floor space to it. So we did some of that. We also converted a lot of storerooms to group rooms over the years. A little bit less storage is needed. As more things go digital, you don't need as many things for book processing. Okay, you don't need as much backlog storage. But I still get a lot of pushback when I'm going, I want to take away another one of your storage rooms. They're going, no. Physical course reserve. Remember how big course reserve always was? Now it's just a couple of rows. We moved it downstairs behind the circulation counter and converted that space into a special collections gallery. We couldn't do it out of our own budget. We got a nice donation. It has a nice naming. Those of you that come by tomorrow will get to see that. But this is, again, part of the repurposing space and away from staff need, more towards student need, and away from book need. The gravel rooftop to the garden study already mentioned. And one of our most recent projects is moving away our microforms collection, because we had a large microforms collection. It was already in compact shelving, okay? But it was on the same floor that had 24/7 capability. And that's valuable space. And it was getting less and less and less used. So, we moved it downstairs. On the left is where it was being dismantled. On the right, we simply took away regular bookshelves from existing compact shelving, mounted these Russ Bassett cabinets in the carriages downstairs, added some materials and storage above. And so this is as far away from the front door of the library as you could get in the building. So it's actually very quiet and kind of okay space, and there's a nice study space nearby. But it lets us repurpose that space, into a study pod zone. And again, not just throwing some furniture on it, but saying, okay, it's an entire area, change the carpet, spice things up, put in some different kinds of furniture, meet different needs. And you'll notice we went with a bright orange rather than just a pod. No. And one of our colleagues saw the reflection of the orange on the ceiling, which you see there, and said, it's like a volcano zone. We decided we would not name it the volcano zone. I just thought that was pretty cool. So it's the study pod zone, and we put a label on it. Another thing is, changing some other. We changed to meet demonstrated or expressed user requirements. So the importance of observation and surveys. We were part of the LibQual survey, and so we have 2 area change requests. This is part of the 24/7 Learning Commons. And in the survey, the students said they wanted, in the overnight space, they wanted some individual study carrels, whereas the Learning Commons was all just tables, and it still is. So we're going to change this particular space from tables to carrels so that there's an area in the 24/7. Now that's going to be reducing the numbers a little bit, but it provides something, a missing capability within the space. And then the other one from the same survey, we have this area looking down through a void to our bottom floor, where we have some tables and sofas. And the survey said some users were complaining about noise coming up from the void, from students at these tables being a little too noisy. And the sofas were not always heavily used except for sleeping. So we said, okay, let's plan to change that as well. Again, as long as we're getting some of these carrels, so we're planning to do this summer to change that whole space to carrels to optimize. So again, as I said, always think about what you're going to do and how effectively it works. So my summary, do your plans, meet the needs expressed and unexpressed. Don't just do something because it's cool or fun, but if you can do a cool or fun thing, do. Are you meeting users who are not currently served? Okay, it's very easy to focus on the people already using the library and how best to meet them. What about others who aren't using the library? Look at other ways people are or might use it. Collaborators, distance learners, secondary students, alumni. Keep revisiting the institution's mission and strategic goals and think about non-traditional uses. This is a number of years ago. There was someone who would come in and do their painting on a table. That's a reading table in the library. They never spilled their ink. They didn't damage anything. It's like, okay, they're studying, they're doing work, they're doing learning. This is to be encouraged, not, oh, you can't do that here. So think about how people use it, and look beyond, okay? There is no substitute for actual communication with users and potential stakeholders. And later you can ask me more questions. Thank you.